Hello and welcome to the 21st Century Work-Life podcast, where we talk about leading remote teams, online collaboration, and working in distributed organizations. My name is Pilar Ortiz, and I'm the director of Virtual Not Distant, a company where we help managers of remote teams to get the most out of online collaboration. You can find out everything we do over at virtualnotdistant.com. Hello and welcome to episode 342 of the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. My name is Pilar Ortiz and I'm your host. This is a guest episode. It is the last guest episode of the year. And what a treat. My guest today is Valentina Thörner, who, if you have been in the space of remote work, you will know her from her tiaras. And she explains in the conversation why she wears a tiara. She is the Empress of Remote. So if you've met her, you will love listening to her. And if you've seen her around in the online space and have never heard her, it's a treat as well. And if you're a little bit more new to the world of remote work, if you're still trying to figure out how do we do this, then this is the episode for you. This is the episode that you need to send to your senior leadership if they are not remote work experts or advocates, or if they have decided that it doesn't work and could never work, because Valentina has some really good insights and some really good advice. So here is my conversation with Valentina Thörner. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Hello and welcome to another episode of the... Oh, hang on, Valentina. Before I introduce you, how do I say your surname?
Thörner, like Tina Turner.
Okay, great. Take two. Oh, well, we might as well start. Welcome to the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. Listeners, it is like home here. It is so wonderful to have Valentina Thörner here today. Welcome, Valentina.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And I also, this is the thing, I feel like, well, it's the first time we interact real time, but I do feel like I've known you for a while. So I didn't even ask you how to introduce you to our listeners. How do you usually introduce yourself?
It very much depends on the audience, because I'm kind of have one leg in the future of work, distributed team management part. And there I say I'm the Empress of Remote.
Yes.
And then I also have another leg in product management and product leadership. So there I say I'm Empress of Product. So...
So you are the Empress of wherever.
Exactly. And actually it's my nickname. So friends call me Empress or Emperatriz in Spanish. So it all comes together.
So from that far, and does it come from anywhere? Where does it come from then? Why do people end up calling you that?
Well, actually the tiara was first, the nickname was second, because I used to, like in the before times, a long time ago, I did a lot of public speaking. And because... if you speak at like in Amsterdam or something, I'm not the only blonde lady there. So because I'm not really good in recognizing or remembering faces, I would always wear the tiara on stage and then tell the people, if you have any additional questions, find the lady with the tiara, because that's easy to remember. And then at one conference, a colleague told me, I bet you would never go to a conference with a tiara if you are not a speaker. And I said, hold my gin tonic. Went to the next conference with my tiara without being a speaker. And I made so many amazing connections, because what happens is that the tiara, it kind of takes a little bit of this intimidation away, because I'm clearly a person who doesn't take herself too seriously, let's say. So lots of people came up and were like, oh, is this a real tiara? Or, oh, I love the sparkle, etc. And this started a lot of interesting conversations. And because I'm actually kind of introverted, like it takes a lot of energy for me to walk up to someone else. But if they walk up to me and I just have to react, that's perfect. So I kind of figured out, oh, this is my little networking hack. And that's how it all started.
I wish I'd talked to you about it ages ago, because I don't get much out of the house anymore, but I did used to. There was a time when I used to go to lots of meetups and lots of conferences. And what you're saying about finding it difficult to approach other people, I completely resonate with that. I had at one point the advantage that I was the person doing podcasting, so people kind of knew, so that was nice. But I think it's fantastic to in a way, it reminds me almost the tiara of a mask. It's a kind of something, it just shifts your reality a little bit, makes you feel a little bit different. That is...
Yeah. I stand up taller when I have the tiara on. Like, I feel how it kind of has an impact on how I present.
Yeah.
And I actually have different tiaras now. So because like this is basically my day-to-day tiara, but then I also have this one, which is quite like it's bigger because if I'm on stage, it's more, this one is more visible and it's also heavier. So I kind of get the sensory input. You are now in an important situation, like do your best.
And also that brings me someone, I know you as the Empress of Remote. Remote is the place where I've encountered you. Mm-hmm. But this is a very, what you're talking about is a very physical self-awareness. It's an awareness of the self that's very physical, of things that are helping you. And so it's I like the contrast or the fusion.
Oh, yeah.
Fusion, actually. Yeah. Wonderful. Right. So... One of the thing that prompted me to finally, after many years, to say, "Oh, Valentina has to come and talk to the listeners," was this this document that you put out. It's actually some time ago now because it took me a while, and I'm just trying to pull it up on my iPad, but I can't pull it up. What's the
dimensions
title?
Of distributed work?
Yes, the dimensions of distributed work. The iPad was supposed to be better than my other tablet, and this was a document that you created. So just maybe tell us a bit about why you created this and where in your work does it fit? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what I do when I'm not doing product stuff is I help organizations to put in the processes that can help them to actually create the products that they want to create. So it's kind of at the intersection between product leadership, operations, people operations, somewhere having all my fingers in all the pies, basically. And what I realized is that everybody says, oh, yeah, we are remote. And then you go a little bit deeper and then you realize actually you have a very specific policy where people can work from home and they can work from outside the home for up to 1 week a month, but it can only be outside the national territory for 3 weeks a year or whatever. So we are putting lots of concepts under the umbrella of remote, and we are not doing ourselves a service with that from a company point of view. Because if you just say we are remote, some people will think this is work from home. Because a lot of people actually during the pandemic, they kind of started thinking about remote as the same as work from home. But there are other people who think remote is work from anywhere. Then there are people who think remote means I can work whenever the muse strikes me, whether it's at 3 o'clock in the morning or at 9 o'clock in the morning, like normal people, and the normal here goes in air quotes. But then you have countries where it's actually illegal to send an email at 3 a.m. in the morning. Mm-hmm. Because of legislation. So the question is, what do you actually mean with remote? Because there is one of the dimensions, especially the location. So where can your people work? And do you have any rules about where they work? Like maybe you have simply the rule that the salespeople should not have their negotiations in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Not because you don't want them to work in a coffee shop, but because there is information that's being transmitted that might be sensitive. And you wouldn't want to have your HR people having salary negotiations in a coffee shop either. And then the other aspect is actually when does the work happen? It's kind of the time of the timing when it happens. And it's very different when you say, okay, we do 9 to 5 or we do flex time, come in between 9 and 11, but then you can leave between 3 and 5 or whatever. Or you can say, do whatever you want. And the thing is, one is not better than the other. For example, for myself, I have twins. They are 7. They go to school. I very much love when my clients want to work between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Yes.
Because then the kids are in school.
Yeah.
While for somebody who maybe, I don't know, loves to go surfing and wherever they live, the best waves are between I'm now inventing because I have no idea about surfing.
Fine.
Between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. So maybe they want to work really early in the morning or only late at night. And so, of course, they would not be a fit for the same type of work or the same role that I am a fit for, even if we had the same abilities or the same skills, because we have very different needs in terms of what we expect from a workplace. So from a company point of view, if you can really define what is the location for you, what do you mean by the location, and what do you mean by the time frame, that can help you with hiring, that can help you with attracting the right talent that actually aligns with what you're trying to do. And it also really, really helps the people ops people, because suddenly you have clear guidelines. And when somebody asks, hey, can I work from Bali? Then you can tell them you can, but you need to stay within our time zone, because we have the clear mandate that everything needs to happen with an overlap of these types of hours, etc. And so you stop only solving for edge cases. You have a very clear policy that's easily understandable, and people can opt into that. And if they don't, well, maybe you're just not a fit as a company.
Yeah, creating that fit, I think, and what is, I agree with everything you're saying. It's very clear. You're saying it much clearer than I'm receiving it here.
Well, and for a lot of companies, it's really hard. Like when I tell them, no, you can decide we only hire people within, Germany, because we really believe in the pension system and the health system and in the 12 months of maternity leave. And that's why we only do Germany, because we want to make sure that all of our employees have the same benefits that are being paid for by the state, and we can't fund those privately. And that's why we only do it. And that is fine. Of course, people are going to complain, but there's always somebody who complains. And I think it's really important that companies actually see this also as a value proposition. Like, these are our values. These are not some arbitrary rules that we picked out of the air, but we actually thought about this. And this is why we're doing what we're doing.
I think that's vital, what you're saying about just deciding what it is you stand behind, and that it's fine. You decide, because you're running the company, and it's fine. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. It doesn't matter how they're doing it. You decide, you make your decision, and then you see how it goes.
And you're never going to make everyone happy. I mean,
the world would be very interesting.
Everywhere the same thing, like in life, in parenting, and running your business, and everything.
Yes. So I love that. So is that what you mean by the workplace narrative, which is a term that you use in the document?
Yeah. It's how do you talk about how work happens? Because the thing is, work has to happen at some point. No, it's really one of the worries of people who see this work from anywhere idea is that they are worried that the people who say work from anywhere actually mean no work anytime.
Do nothing anywhere.
Exactly. And there are also some people who kind of say, oh, I work when I'm inspired, and when I'm not inspired, and then I don't work. And in my personal experience, if you only work when you're inspired, you don't really get a lot of things done, because sometimes it's just showing up that makes the difference. Yeah. So for a company to actually have this clear narrative and be like, this is what we stand for, because we want you to work somewhere, we want you to work sometime, and we want to give you the guidance so that it works for you as well. Because one of the downsides, obviously, of work whenever you want or wherever you work, that a lot of people may feel guilty and end up working 16 hours a day, or not even working, but being connected 16 hours a day, and then never really disconnecting. And I think as a company, if you value the mental health of your employees, actually giving some kind of guidance, even if that is, you can work whenever you want. We expect 7 hours a day. Oh no, I have to track my hours. Well, yes, but actually we're giving you all the flexibility in the world.
Yeah. The balance between guidance, rules, and freedom is never very straightforward. And we all know when we're especially in creative work that we need some rules. And then we can be free within those rules, as long as they're clear. Yeah, I love that. So we've got location and schedule as the two dimensions that we talk about, because we've seen that everyone understands location, but I think the schedule part is still...
Yeah, if we look at the two extremes, on the one side, we have 9 to 5. Or 9 to 6 or 8 to 5 or like whatever in your country is the standard start and end time. And then on the other extreme, you have the do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. But of course, these are not the only two options, because then there are a lot of companies who say, okay, you start and end more or less whenever you want. All meetings happen between, let's say, 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. So these are kind of the core working hours, and we kind of expect you to be reachable during those hours. But whether you start at 7 and then like get out at 3, or you start at 11 and then stay later, that's like your prerogative. Then you can also have split days. Like, for example, during the pandemic, I did loads of split days because I would get up before my kids woke up at like 5 a.m. in the morning, and then I would work like from 5 to 9. And then when the kids wake up, I would work until they had their midday nap, and then work another 2 hours, and then work whatever was left over when they were back in bed at night. I do not recommend this as a long-term plan, but like during lockdown, that was the only way how I could put those like kids and work together. And sometimes, like when kids are sick or something, this is actually what can make all the difference, that you have this flexibility. But this also doesn't mean like work all in, because I still kind of was able to tell the company, so I would be here and here and here. Can we please do our meetings, I don't know, at 2 p.m. because that's when the kids sleep, or at 9 p.m. I'm happy to take over the West Coast, East Coast, whatever customers who are up at that time of the day. So to kind of, the idea is you actually have to define some kind of logic and then allow people to communicate that logic. And the more flexible you are, the more you need to not prescribe, but explain to people how they can signal that they are now there. Because even if you're completely async, still, it's important that people kind of know what to expect, because if you just logged off, it would certainly take time for you to see whatever I just wrote you. But if I know that you actually come online 3 hours after I log on for my day, I can put another expectation on the message. Because scheduling has an even bigger impact on communication than location. Mm-hmm. Because location, if you're at home or in a co-working or whatever, like there's basically either we are in the same room or we're not. But with time, like with the schedule, it's like maybe we are online at the same time, or maybe we're not. Maybe we're on opposite sides of the schedule. Maybe there's a 12-hour gap between both of us. There's a 3-hour overlay. There are lots of things, but somebody has to sit down and actually think through this. And how will this affect how we work?
Very strong. I think the point you're making, I think, is also missed, that sometimes we're getting guidelines to employees about how flexible they can be with their time, but we're not getting guidelines as to how they need to communicate that. Mm-hmm. Because this schedule flexibility, like especially the more you go to the part where you can work whenever you want.
Yeah.
The more, like you say, we need a lot more communication, and sometimes we just need to know how to communicate that, so we don't have to think about it.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing, there was something else I wanted to pick up on near the end. So, yes, and also it's this availability is not just, as you're saying, about when we're available in real time to each other, but also how the work is getting done, and especially when we're working closely together. Exactly. So what kind of work do you think then is better suited or to both of those poles in the time spectrum? So what kind of work can take the async 100%? Let's go for the extreme. What kind of work could take the 100% async, and what kind of work actually needs quite a big overlap of time between people?
Customer support and sales cannot be async. Mm-hmm. Because you can organize, or maybe if you have a very, very specific customer, but your garden variety of customer support needs to be there when your customer is there. And as soon as you're going into scheduling, like if you have 24/7 chat support, you need to make sure that 24/7 somebody is sitting at the other side of the computer and can answer the customers. That means you very likely will have shifts. So traditionally, there would be 3 8-hour shifts in a day. And then maybe you have people who do the graveyard shift, which is the one that goes through the middle of the night. Or maybe you have like a follow the sun system where you have one center in Europe, one in Asia, and one in the US, or like the Latin America, US time zones. And that you rotate around the globe, but you still need people to be at their computer at a specific time. And then there are other people who are like, everybody signs themselves up for when they're available, and we shuffle them and tell them when they need to be at their computer. But there's still kind of a implementation from above that tells you need to work at this time, because in customer support and also in sales, anything that is really customer facing, the input kind of correlates with the output in terms of time. Mm-hmm. You cannot offer 4 hours of customer support in 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like there's no optimization that can make that happen. You can use chatbots, you can use AI to kind of do more in those 4 hours, but those 4 hours, somebody needs to be there. And then on the other extreme, development work, if you have really, really good practice in terms of writing down the scope, writing down what's exactly needed. So everything where the communication can happen in writing lends itself for async. Creative work as well, if these creative people are fine not having those little group huddles where they can just put ideas in front of other people and discuss them. And that brings us to another kind of complication of the entire matter. Some people think in writing. I'm one of those people. I write things down, and that helps me to structure my brain, and I get new insights by writing down what I already know, because it kind of helps me to connect the dots. Now, there are other people who actually think through, like, verbally. They have to explain what's in their brain to somebody, and then they make, at the end, very similar to connections that I do in writing, but they do it verbally. Now, of course, for these verbal thinkers, for lack of a better word, the office is better because there are lots of people available whom you can just kind of use for you as your canvas to think through the problems that you have. While for me, obviously, it's much better to be in a kind of async company, or a company that puts value into discussing things in a Google Doc.
Yes.
Because that's the way how I think. And as a company, you probably need both. Like, I don't think that there are very few companies who are 100% async, especially nowadays where it's so easy to actually have a video call. Like some companies, for example, Automatic, the WordPress people, they used to be completely async when they were created, because, I mean, there was, at the very beginning, there wasn't even Skype. So like basically, like they were happy that they didn't have to send carrier pigeons with letters. But nowadays, like everybody has a little bit, or at least, of like social contact. But it's like, how can you put these, like, whom are you optimizing for in your company? Whom are you optimizing based on different functions? And how can you make sure that you don't accidentally forget a part of the population, so you say? For me, it reminds me a little bit, because, I mean, within the remote world, there's a lot of push to async, because it kind of allows for more flexibility when it comes to the schedule and access. But some people don't want to be async. Some people actually think better when they do it in person, or like in person as in like you and me now.
Yeah.
So by telling them, oh, you just have to learn how to write better documents. That's like when we told back in the day people they need to be more extroverted to be successful in business. Like, so how can we actually incorporate these people and not alienate them? Because we need their brains as well, even though they may structure things differently than ourselves. Or specifically because they are structuring them differently than ourselves.
I'm really glad you're using that word, and that you talk about verbal thinkers versus writing thinkers, and not necessarily introversion or extroversion, because I think it's very specific to say, yeah, some people think better in this way, or express their ideas, or come to their ideas better in one medium than the other. And I think it's right that there are lots of axes. There's the location, there's the scheduling, then there's the personal side of what kind of communication and what kind of schedule have we got to suit the different individuals as well. So it's a little bit more complicated, I think, than many organizations are seeing. And I don't know about you, but I feel that I always complain about the same thing, and nobody can do anything about it, which is, I think, the lack of time that can be put, or people are ready to put into this, because it needs that whole experimentation cycle.
Yeah.
Of we look at everything, then we try it, and then we revise it. I don't know. What are you seeing in that way in trying out things? How are organizations doing with that?
So there's, at the moment, what I'm mostly seeing is there are organizations who take this very, very seriously, like who get somebody like me in to review everything, or who appoint a head of remote internally and really, really look at everything and like see about how can we work better together. And those are far and few in between. Mm-hmm. And then there's most companies are kind of muddling through. Mm-hmm. They're kind of, okay, we would actually like to get everybody back to 9 to 5 working from the office, because at least we kind of thought we knew what we were doing. Yes. But we can't, because we told them to come back and they basically ignored us, and there's nothing we can do to enforce this, like especially in the tech industry. Mm-hmm. They just go to another company that allows work from home, and like there's that. So you can't just, and getting rid of 70% of your company from one day to the other, even if it's a different job market, I mean, you can't hire so many people in such a short time. So there isn't, like, companies can't really force people to come to the office necessarily, but they just muddle through, and then they hope that somehow it works. And more often than not, it doesn't really work that well. So what I've seen actually happening in a lot of those companies is that there are certain pockets within the company where somebody is really passionate about making this work, because they are listening to your podcast, because they've stumbled over the Remote How Institute or whatever. Like, there are different points where they're like, oh, there is a different way. Let me learn more about this. And then as they learn more about this, they try to bring these things to their organization. Now, this is a very, very slow, it's a little bit Sisyphus.
Yeah. Yes, with the ball rolling up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like feeling like a ball rolling up the hill. Yes. But they start with, and it also depends at which level they are, because of course, if you're an individual contributor, you don't have that much impact on company policies than if you're, for example, a team lead, or if you're the head of HR. But they start to experiment. And my hope is kind of that we get more and more people who are actually interested in the topic and who realize we don't have to be stressed out at work all the time. Like, there are different ways to organize, so let's find these different ways. And it can start with little things like, I like to start my meetings at 5 minutes past the hour, because I know that everybody has meetings from top of the hour to top of the hour. And in too many companies, these meetings are actually, they start at 9 and then they finish when you collapse. So by giving these 5 minutes, I know that I'm giving the other person like a bio break opportunity and to refill their coffee. So they are then actually a much better call partner to me than if they come in like, oh my God, I'm late, sorry, because the other call ran over or whatever. And it's these little experiments that then sometimes like spreads through the company. And it won't happen with every experiment, but it will happen with some experiments. So like if you, listener, are in a company where you're like, oh, this doesn't work. Like look what has worked in other companies and see what you can experiment with. Because some of the things will work in your company. Not all of them. Each company has their own company culture and it's very difficult to transplant things. But you can experiment with them and try them out. Like if you're getting an invite without an agenda, send an email and ask, hey, what's the outcome we're looking for? You won't get a full agenda, but at least you're going to get a topic of the meeting. And then like this way, bit by bit, you can basically try to educate other people. And then at some point you can say, hey, maybe you didn't realize, but I have done this and this and this, and it has really worked out. So how about we try to roll this out to 3 other teams? And that's how you actually make change like from the ground up.
I love that, and there's so much in that. Again, I have to say your example about starting meetings 5 minutes later, as well as the benefits that specific thing can have, it tells you that you can start playing with time. Yep. Again, it's going back to the schedule thing. We've always done it like this, but look, now we're just going to do it this little bit different, and that can send out a very strong signal that we can start to shift. This is not, like we're saying, not just about location, also about playing with time. And also, as you were talking about what we can do as either individual contributors or as solo team leaders in an organization, is that actually learning and development could have a much better time and have a much more impact if they facilitated the spread of the learning of these experiments. Mm-hmm. So instead of bringing in a program on how to lead your remote team, actually just facilitate, pick the couple of people, get some working out loud practices out there and support those people.
And then make sure that they share their learnings.
Yes, exactly. That's the sharing is the piece that's missing. Yeah. But again, it's going back to what you were saying at the beginning of that if we have guidelines for scheduling and that if we have flexibility in scheduling, we need to give our people guidelines on how to communicate availability. It's the same thing. If we want people to share their learning, what are the things that are very easy to do? Have we got some, whatever it is, online groups, whatever, or can you just send an email to HR and say, I want to record a video, can you distribute it for me? I just want to explain. So lots in there.
Yeah, and the thing is, people want to share their experience. People love to talk about their wins. They love to talk about what really, really worked well. Sometimes all that you need is giving them permission to share it. And like giving them the permission to share and also telling them where they can share this.
Yes.
Because what I hear a lot of leaders telling them is like, oh, I have an open door policy. They can come to me whenever they want. Like seriously, like that's not how it works because there is a hierarchy differences. People don't just go and like knock on your door, especially if it's not a real door and they don't know you're probably doing something more important. That's usually what people think. But if you tell them, hey, we have this Slack channels, this team space, these twists, whatever, please put your learnings about how you innovated with your team there. Then it's like, oh, now I actually have the mandate to share these things there. And suddenly people actually do share it. Like you need to give them permission. You cannot just take for granted that people are going to talk about things just because you would talk about things.
Especially if it's a win, this permission, and especially in some cultures, this permission to share something that you're doing well.
Yeah.
And even if it's a mandate, you use the word mandate there, I think that's great. You must share what you've done well.
You can also owe it to this company to share what you've learned.
Yes. Wow. This is just really, really great. This is really refreshing as well, because I think that what it's giving us is, I mean, for those of us who've been in the space and thinking about this for long, it's just like, yes, of course. Yes, this is it. But it also allows us to see where the difficulties are in understanding how to make this work. Like the focus has been on location, but we need to focus on scheduling. And then from scheduling, we need experiments around scheduling. We need to, blah, blah. And for people who are still trying to define how their organization works, it gives them something very specific. Like everything you've been saying, it gives us little, okay, well, we could try this. Oh, we're not clear on this. We're clear on this, but not on this. So that's all really useful.
And if your long-term goal is to actually go to a work from anywhere thingy, starting with the scheduling is actually the smart thing, because it allows you to practice what happens if somebody is in a different time zone. And it's much easier to start with the let's play pretend. That you are not online those hours or whatever, but we do this while we still can get hold of each other pretty easy. Like if you now move to the other side of the world, like I say, I'm in Spain, you now move to Australia, and we have to figure everything out while we actually can't talk to each other because one of us will always be sleeping. Like that puts a lot of stress on the people, on the organization, and it will stall the work. Because everything will take longer, because that's the thing. Async only takes longer because you have to like wait for the other person to come online again. This is not a bad thing necessarily, because it also allows you to have to think deeper through things. But if you have a lot of verbal communicators, you need to find a way, like, are we going to introduce Loom videos that we're going to send back and forth? Like, how can we kind of make sure that even though we are now time zones apart, that we still maintain this communication? And they're actually starting with scheduling experiments is a lot less high stakes. So a lot more low stakes, whatever, than like directly going into, you are in Bali, I'm in Europe, and the other person is in Sao Paulo.
Really nice. And I think as a future-proof strategy as well. For before the pandemic, I worked with an organization. They were just UK-based. But the reason they brought me in to work with them was because they realized that they had organized the teams by location, and they wanted to organize them by function. And by function, it meant having people working together all across the country. And so the async way of working could help an organization have better teams, or teams that, if that's the way they want to go, there's also a benefit, of course, of having cross-functional. But actually, you might want to have cross-functional. You might be a global company and want people across the world to work out together more. And also, like you're saying, people move all the time, and you lose people because they can't keep their job because of the way you're set up. So.
And personal situations change. Like once you have a child, and suddenly you are only available while the kid is at school. Even though I would totally prefer to have a very different schedule to the one that I have. But like for the next couple of years, I'm bound to the school schedule, which is also, incidentally, the schedule of traditional companies. So now I'm a very boring 9-to-5 person.
But, well, you know what? I still do something like 9-to-5, only I stick stuff in, but I don't know. We are also creatures of habit, so that is on top of it. And the missing piece is that we can play with schedule all we want, but society still has a kind of schedule, mainly because of the way that families are organized, and it's practical. So I think also we've got to not forget that there's a much wider. It's the same with the 4-day week. That would be great if everyone did that, but as a society, we're not used to that. So it's still all a bit. So yes, I think, and they are choices and their ways of doing things. But I think, actually, I just said they are choices. I think now they're more choice than before, and that's okay. Like you going back to the beginning of your point, just make the choice, see how it goes.
Yeah, the good thing about choices is if you realize it doesn't work, you do something different. Because there are very, very few decisions in life and business that you cannot go back on.
Yeah.
I think the only one really is having a kid.
Because
the return policy is abysmal. But everything else, I mean, you're going to make mistakes. Like if you're not making any mistakes, you're doing something wrong anyway. So like make those experiments. Some of them will work. Some of them won't work. Before the pandemic, what I usually recommended people is like, okay, send everybody home for a week and see what breaks.
Yeah.
Because something is bound to break. Yeah. So let's see make sure that everybody writes down what was pushed to the next week when we are back in office. Because that kind of tells you where the communication or the collaboration is breaking down when people are not in the office together. And you can do the same with schedules. Okay, let's just see. This week, no meetings on Monday and Tuesdays. Let's see what happens. Let's see how this impacts. Did you feel more stressed? Did you feel less stressed? Did you get more done? Did you push too many meetings and then on Thursday you basically started your meeting marathon because everything had to put in there? Okay, we've learned something. So maybe we just start with a meeting free Wednesday afternoon and then take it from there. So like you can play with all of this, and I do recommend when you do experiments to give them like a start point and also an end point, and not do an experiment over 3 years, but maybe do it over a week or over a month, and make sure that someone is actually in charge of collecting the insights, so that this person kind of owns the experiment. And you can, if somebody, like you can actually use this to implement more change management in your company, because you can just say officially, hey, if anyone wants to try something out with the company, you can do this. You will be the one in charge.
Yeah.
this is also a way to scout for leadership candidates, because you'll see who has kind of an aptitude for that. And then you own this, you organize this, you collect the data, and then you do a little presentation in or send out a memo if you don't like to speak in public, and share the insights. Like, it's a way on how you can kind of empower your employees if that's what you want. And as a business owner, like, first you need to figure out what you actually want and what you want to offer.
Wonderful. Right, Valentina, I could carry on talking to you for ages, but tell us about the newsletter you have, Empress of Remote. What kind of stuff do you talk about there?
Because it's a very personal newsletter, actually. It's kind of, it's usually about remote processes and about product. And because currently I'm very deep in a project on product excellence, which is close to product operations, like setting up how product can be better collaborating in a big organization. A lot of the things that I'm thinking through actually end up in the newsletter, because obviously I think in writing.
Yes,
so currently it's a lot of like, how can we actually productize everything and use product theory for our own self-advancement, to advance our organization, to change our organization, and then obviously also to change your product. But like, how can we use these ideas about looking at things like a product, thinking about who's actually our customer, what are we trying to achieve with ourselves, and then implementing this. So the one that went out yesterday was about how you can use AI in product and in your life. Not necessarily like making an AI product, but using AI what's already there, because I know like AI is not going to go anywhere. It's kind of transversal over all the different areas that there are, but it looks so big and so scary that a lot of people are basically in this mode, like, no, I don't want to know anything about this. And so like, I'm going into what can you do to actually dip your toes into AI to like a little bit make it less scary. Basically, what the pandemic did for us with remote work is it threw everybody into the water and be like, let's see if you can swim. And like with AI, maybe don't wait until you can't ignore it anymore, but like look into what can you do it now. So it's a very, very versatile newsletter. But so far, the feedback has been great. So
good stuff. Yeah, I agree with the parallel between remote and AI. I feel the integration into companies is the same. So empressofremote.substack.com, or is there another link? Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. So anyway, we'll put the link in the show notes, and also LinkedIn, of course. You are Valentina Thörner, which is Thoerner. But to be honest, if you Google Empress of Remote, you're bound to come up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to say to our listeners before we wrap up this very stimulating conversation, actually?
Yeah, basically a task this week, because I'm currently very much in meeting drama. See if there is a meeting that you can cancel.
Okay.
And do something else instead. Make it a newsletter, make it a joint document, make it something else. Like, don't have that meeting, and use that hour to actually do something more productive.
Wonderful. We've never had homework for the listeners before, so that's the first. Thank you very much, Valentina.
You're very welcome. This was a fun conversation.
A big thank you to Ross Winter for polishing the audio of this episode. And thank you, listeners, for choosing to listen to the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. Remember to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app, and you can check out the full show notes over at virtualnotdistant.com/podcasts. Talking of podcasts, we have another show you can listen to, Management Cafe, which you should also be able to find on all podcast apps. I have been Pilar Ortiz. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, enjoy.